wrestling and all that's in between. On the MIC, it's the KEY to recall what we see. Like a magic trick, can take you back, so open sesame. Come with us, we'll take a ride through epic memories. That nostalgia that hits you hard and gets you every time. That do you remember? Makes you laugh and sometimes makes you cry. It's the bops, the shows, the shops. Frank and Jen don't stop. Welcome everybody to Dillo's Pop.
Hello, there we are. There's a lot going on with the StreamYard there. It gave me a false start. Like I hit it both times. I got the spinning wheel. I've been trying to guess when to hit the video to start, and so you don't get the test bars right at the bottom of the screen at the beginning, and then it didn't happen.
No, fail.
Welcome to this edition of Dillos. I just blew that. Dillos Pop. Here it is. Boom.
Dillos Pop.
She is Jen.
Oh, hello.
And I am Frank. We started at Dillos Pop about 5 or 6 months ago. And this is probably our 5th or 6th one that we've done. But we are here.
What, is it our third?
Maybe our third. I don't know. We're here on our YouTube channel. It's a Friday night. This is the third night in a row that we have recorded. On Wednesday, we recorded our Theme Park Thursday podcast over at DillosDizResort.com. Of course, that is our Patreon with memberships beginning as low as $1 per month. DillosDizResort.com. That was on Wednesday night. In anticipation of Thursday morning, last night we did our fancy Theme Park Thursday live here on our YouTube channel. 3 topics or subjects. I have 4 fingers up right now. I don't know. My sinuses are at a level this week that it's just impacting my brain capacity at this point.
Yeah, we're not handling this weather. Yeah, we don't like this weather.
And then tonight, here we are. And we got folks in the chat still hanging with us 3 days later.
Hello. I see they're trying to see if we'll do another one tomorrow.
Oh, yeah? Keep the streak alive. There it is.
How many nights in a row could we do? I don't know.
We've done the 12 days of Dillos Diz Twitter Ohana. We've done the Vlogmas. I don't know. I mean, it's not out of the question for tomorrow.
I don't think but neither of those have we gone live for consistently for that many nights.
No. Yeah, no, we've never been live.
That'll be a challenge for another time.
Yeah. When it's getting closer to that big 1,000 subscriber number.
More things to entice. Hey, if you're watching this back later on, be sure to hit that like and subscribe. Or if you're watching right now, make sure to hit the like button. If you're not subscribed, we'd love to have you. As I say in the closer of every episode, we'd love to have you check out. I can't with myself. When are you doing the closer again for the Theme Park Thursday podcast?
Because... I know. Wow. I gotta. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I know. It's on the list of things I have to get my life in order for. We are here tonight because we felt a pull, as it were, to do a little chat here about the life and career of Matthew Perry, who passed away last week. The largest entertainment news story of the week, basically. And we didn't even really discuss the why. I don't think we've gone into the particulars. So what made you want to do it? What makes me want to do it? I don't know. But so we'll do a little, just a free form chat here. People can make references in the little chat area here. We're happy to have you with us along the way. And I think sometimes when I think about Dillos Pop, because we've done TV show recaps, we've done we did It's Gonna Be May, we did that one time. I think a particular worry of mine when it comes to Dillos Pop is that it's going to happen when someone passes away that we hold in particularly high regard.
Right.
And I remember when we started the podcast and we would, we always talked about Regis, and it was like, oh man, I don't want to when Regis passes away. And because that happened in 2020, I felt almost like, well, it's already all the world is crazy. So
Mhm.
yeah, I feel like maybe I was impacted, but not. It didn't uh perhaps have the marathon podcasting that we could have had
Yeah,
involved in
yeah.
that. But something doing Dillo's Pop, I feel like we did a live watch of Full House when Bob Saget
Mhm.
passed away on the channel here. So those are I hesitate sometimes about the thought of it because I don't want to be morbid or macabre or anything like that. But I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Jen.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to see Dillo's Pop turn into Dillo's Pop in memoriam.
Right,
I don't
right.
want to do that. It is difficult though because I feel like in the past couple of years, there's a lot of icons and there's a lot of big names that we grew up with that have passed away. And I mean, for this in particular, this episode, it's weird because last week during our post show over at the resort, I
Mhm,
mentioned that I had found the old Friends trivia game from the
mhm,
90s or whatever at Mama and Papa Dillo's, and I brought it home. And I was like, oh, we'll totally do a whole Friends Pop episode and
mhm.
we'll talk about it. Maybe we'll do some trivia questions, and it'll be a whole thing. Didn't see this coming.
Right.
And so then, to me, though, I was like, how do we not do an episode about Matthew Perry?
Yeah, and I mean, if you're coming over and you're checking us out here, or you started the stream late, and you're like, "Why? Well, you guys you do Disney a lot. Matthew Perry's not that connected to Disney, and oh, what he just had a sitcom on ABC, or it's not about that. It's
Mhm,
about I think the type of performer actor that
mhm,
Matthew Perry was, and how that kind of fits into who we are a little
mhm.
bit, and I feel like that's the basis of that. And I don't even know if we've ever really, obviously a majority of this stream here will be focused on Friends. It's kind of, hard to balance everything else against the magnitude of,
Mhm.
of Friends. But I don't know if we've really ever talked about Chandler in a deeper way without
Yeah.
making an MFA and dramaturgy joke.
Mhm.
But I think one of the first things, and Jen, you were younger than I was during this
Well,
point, so I
always. Oh,
and I
right. Uh-huh.
always forever 7.5 years younger. When I say to the 7-year-old, she's 7.5, I think
Mhm.
about like, oh, when you were born, that is the age gap
Yeah.
of that the thing I think about first always in Matthew Perry's case is growing pains. and
Mhm.
and I don't know what like the rerun situation was for growing pains by the time you got to a certain age,
No, it
but
was
yeah,
constant. Yeah.
yeah, right.
Uh-huh.
I mean, and I don't want to go into a growing pains tangent, but I always felt like growing pains was this alternative to Family Ties,
Yes.
and maybe because they were based in Long Island, even though none of them felt like they were from Long Island. Uh, the Seaver family. Um, there was a lot to relate to on that show for us. I
Yeah.
think
Mhm.
we watched Family Ties too. And Michael J. Fox is Michael J. Fox. Obviously, he was a phenom on that show.
Yeah.
But Growing Pains kind of had this grounded nature to it that made it watchable for us all the time. And Matthew Perry had this 3-episode arc as Carol's boyfriend that ended in tragedy.
Mhm.
And I feel like I know how even then, probably even in high school when it first aired, how people reacted to what happened, but also I think the performance. I don't know, people really could quantify the level of performance they got, and based on how they were impacted the next day at school or whatever by what
Mhm.
they had seen on Growing Pains.
Yeah. No, and that because it's not a clip I have thought about much or the episodes that I've thought about much,
Yeah.
but the clip of finding out the tragedy,
Hmm.
no spoilers from Growing Pains from
Hmm.
19, but that, that clip popped up on TikTok the other day, sitting there watching it crying. I was like, "Oh, man." but it came back to me, like, it wasn't like, "What? I don't remember this." I immediately remembered it as I'm watching it, like, "Oh, right," and, "Oh my god, this was so sad," and I think I was reading some of the comments, like, leave it to, 80s and 90s TV to teach a lesson while just completely ripping your heart apart and making
Hmm.
you feel, um, but yeah, those were, intense episodes.
So, and to kind of bring it back a little bit, I think it's funny what you learn about an actor over time and why sometimes you learn more about some actors as opposed to others,
Mhm,
and why you're drawn to some actors more than others. But I think there was a time, and I'm not saying, and this is not to disqualify any other decades or eras or however
mhm,
you want to say it, but there were many actors of that time that, when you go back 10, 20, you think about like method actors and, they all had this actor training and all of that.
mhm,
But around, sometime in the 80s, though, there were certain actors where you would see them on TV and, now I recognize it as like, they're so truthful in the moment.
mhm,
And it's not like, it's effortless, I think is the
yeah,
word, and
mhm,
there were certain people like that. I remember, Mama Dillo, Jason Bateman was on Silver Spoons, and she was
mhm,
like, "Boom, he's good. He's gonna be." I'm like, "What are you? I'm 8 years old. What are you pointing at this kid on?" And like but you could see it, and you
yeah,
and certain actors had that quality, you know, and if they were given the right material, it didn't matter, and there was a naturalness to it. Sometimes you talk about Jason Priestley on 90210. Now that was a soap opera drama. So obviously the material was not always, it was over the top. It was
mhm,
melodramatic. But when Jason Priestley was like just hanging out with his buds,
mhm,
that is what we're drawn to. There's a likability there. And and Matthew Perry and just a little, he was on 90210, so I make that reference
yeah,
too. But he popped up in these guest spots a couple of times, having moved from Canada to California to play tennis,
mm,
because he was a tennis player. That just to see him pop up in these little guest spots, you're like, who's this guy? Who's this
mhm,
guy again? Here he is.
mhm,
And that's the first thing that always jumps out at me. And I know we're going to segue into Friends really fast here, but there's that effortlessness to how he just, he's on screen.
yeah. Well, and going back to 90210, in the episode he was in, another traumatic episode and very intense,
Mhm.
and it's interesting because I mean, that's another episode. If I watch 90210 and I watch that episode, I'm gonna cry at that episode too.
Right.
And it's interesting that, in the early career that he had, he was in these roles and he was put in these roles where he's playing these very emotional, deeper,
Mhm.
heavier parts. And then to see him then go into Friends and be who he became is so interesting. Like, when you go
Yeah.
back to the beginning and see that, because usually as a young actor, if you're put in these parts, you're kind of put in that box and it's like,
Mhm.
"Okay, you play the drama and you
Right.
play it well, so you stay here and you don't
Yeah.
cross over." And he was able to make that, crossover.
Yeah, and I think, where some people sometimes you go, "Oh, you have a really great," you have a Robin Williams who you
Mhm,
just see in these roles, and then when he started doing dramatic roles, you're like, "Whoa," and it kinda became the norm of how good comedians were in serious roles.
yeah,
Tom Hanks made that crossover, even going back, Jackie Gleason made that crossover.
mhm,
That, they just had that comedians, they pulled back the mask and there's just so much more
yeah,
underneath. Where Matthew Perry, in some ways, where people look at Chandler as, especially if you're a casual Friends viewer and not
mhm,
someone who was like in it
yeah,
the whole time and watches the reruns every night, like, we do.
mhm,
uh, it was almost backwards. You got to see the layers first,
yeah,
and then he got to be the comedian in some
mhm,
way, the comedic actor.
yeah,
And when looking at it that way, It's and looking at it as a whole, it's you don't see that too often. You don't see the ability to go in, like you're saying, into that comedic role.
Yeah. Yeah, and as the years went on, and even again, I know we'll focus on Friends. So even while he was in Friends, and then he started doing movies, and he's doing movies like Fools Rush In, which
Mhm.
is a favorite of mine. And he's now playing like rom-com guy because
Yeah,
I feel like, him and Jennifer Aniston kind of took that rom-com path for a little bit, like testing those waters out during the
right.
same years.
Hmm.
And he the charisma he has and the looks that he gives,
Hmm.
and it's it makes you believe. I mean, I saw that Lewis was saying um to have that certain presence where you feel like you're actually friends with him, like
Right.
he brought you into whoever he's playing, and he was able to do that across the genres.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, and yeah, and that's what you want. You want the likability, you want the relatability. That's what, Lewis, who I know is very big on the suspension of disbelief.
Mhm.
He needs the suspension.
Mhm.
Matthew Perry, again, is effortless in that way. He's going to pull you into his world,
Yeah.
and you're going to believe that you live in the same world as that character.
Yes. Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
I don't know if you've ever I've seen the clip once and I didn't look back on it and everything, but prior to Friends starting, Matthew Perry was committed to this TV series called
Mhm.
LAX 2194,
What?
where he was the manager of the Los Angeles airport in the year 2194.
I feel like I've heard about that, like, there's something in my brain that's familiar, but
Tangent many, many years ago. And I don't know if you were there, Jen, but it was definitely
Mhm,
Dillo and I. We got like tickets or we got invited to an undisclosed location on Long Island
mhm.
where we watched one or two television pilots where we had to provide our feedback and
What?
surveys. And I don't remember what these TV shows were.
Mhm,
But they were TV pilots. And all I remember is they looked nothing like I saw on TV. They looked so cheaply made.
mm,
Like they had like it looked like cardboard cutouts that
mhm.
forced perspective. It was like, no, these aren't TV shows. Like,
Yeah,
what are you doing? And that's all I think of when I saw one clip one time of it's like, okay, you don't have the budget to do LAX in the year 2194.
yeah,
And Matthew Perry is walking around like, so he was able, and they talked about this a little bit. Probably the clip was on the reunion episode on HBO
mm,
Max. Is probably what, on just Max now
mhm.
is that they it was able to like, all right, this show ain't gonna make it, so he can go film the pilot.
Yeah.
But did you get into Friends right away?
I feel like I did. I remember watching it. Sorry for those that are older than me, but I remember watching it personally, like from the beginning, and I want to say seventh grade, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
But
Hmm.
so maybe I was a year behind or something, but I know that I was watching it in seventh grade, so I may have watched it before that, but
Hmm.
that's in my brain. So
Jeffers with a great point about LAX 2194.
mm,
It's like Wings, only the future. You're not
yeah,
wrong.
mm-hmm,
I did not watch Friends right away, and I
mm-hmm.
think I mentioned this in my not a tweet last week when on Saturday. Is one 94 to 95, the first season of Friends was I was very busy. I was doing shows at school. I was working. It was
Mm-hmm.
a busy time. It wasn't 1993. That's
Right,
we've been
it was
joking
past
about lately.
93.
It was
If
past
you listen
1993.
to Theme Park Thursday,
There,
yeah.
there
But that
was a
makes sense,
trajectory.
94 to 95, that first season, so that's 7th grade for me.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So it was two parts, right? It was three parts, I guess. One part, I wasn't around much to catch the episodes as they were happening.
Mhm.
Part two was I was a Seinfeld guy, so I felt like Friends was the opposite of
Right.
Seinfeld, and three was everybody was going crazy for Friends, and now it was typical. There too many people are talking about this.
Mhm.
I'm not going to be into that the same way everyone else is into that.
Right.
One of those.
Yeah.
the hype machine was quick
Yes.
throughout that first season. So yeah, that's funny. And like, and I know that like I would record Seinfeld if I wasn't home, but I would not record Friends.
Right. Right.
The must see TV Thursday time block that it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah. Oh,
Lewis is saying he only barely watched Friends for the first when it was in the first run. Yeah, so when I moved to Orlando in August of '95, and I don't, of course, I'm not going to remember this exactly, and I should have looked it up, but I remember the first episode I ever saw, which was I think a rerun, was the final episode of that first season when Rachel finds out. And, of course, Chandler's the one who blows it. And I, vividly feel like remember watching that scene and instantly relating to the like, oh my God, what did I just say? I just want to, like, I instantly related to that character of like saying too much and instantly regretting it. And that was it. And I felt like I was suddenly hooked into that show forever.
Yeah. I'm seeing Jeffers say, I hated Friends when it first came out. Thought the monkey, who he then later corrects as the series, not the monkey. I thought you meant Marcel. Are you talking about Marcel? Was the stupidest thing. Didn't come back till after it was done. Okay. Yeah.
Oh,
And that's what's funny too, is Friends in the early days. There was a monkey, there was a kid, there was all the things that you're not supposed to work with in Hollywood because they're, whatever.
Right.
And they had it all. But yeah, I mean, I feel like I started from the beginning and then it became like that was more of my rerun show. And to Val's earlier comment, yes, we will do a full pop episode just on Friends. We will still do that because we could just talk for days on it. But that did become my like rerun comfort show. That was my first comfort show, and now I have so many. The show I would fall asleep to, and the show that was just on all the time, and I knew the most trivia from, and I knew all the lines, and I mean, we were just watching before this, and we just put on wherever we had left off last time we were watching Friends, and just by a scene or a jacket that someone's wearing, I'm like, oh, it's this episode. I know exactly what episode this is, and it just, yeah, I don't know. I think I was in from the beginning.
Yeah, at the end, I think it was easy for me as the the sarcastic kid in the back of the classroom to relate to Chandler as kind of like, and I don't want to say joke machine, but I wasn't thinking deeper at the time necessarily, but when I did the Back to the Future discussion here on the channel a couple of weeks ago, I talked about the Commedia dell'arte, and in the Commedia, you got a pair of lovers, and you got the sidekick friends, and sometimes you got parental characters and older characters and things like that, and where the show was, if you think about Hallmark movies, they have the characters are the lovers, and then they got their friends, and then the same thing. It's just not necessarily a comedy. With Friends, early on, you're establishing Ross and Rachel as these inamorati, and then you have two sets of these kind of sidekick characters. And really, as I learned more about theater and things like that, what I really loved was that it was able to pivot from Ross and Rachel to Chandler and Monica being the lovers, the inamorati, and they were able to ride that for a while, and that was, I think, pivotal for the show in some ways. That with Seinfeld's a different kind of show, and I am probably I'm saying this, but it's not what I think. Hasn't aged as well as Friends. And where you clearly recognize when Larry David stopped writing for Friends in the episodes, and how the
Seinfeld.
episodes are. Seinfeld, and how the episodes of Seinfeld were in the final 2 seasons or whatever. With Friends, I think if they weren't able to catch that wave, I don't know. I don't know how the show would have turned out. And I love Courtney Cox. I love Monica, but Chandler carried that. I mean,
Yeah.
Matthew Perry is responsible for taking the show to another level to sustain, in spite of all of his personal stuff,
Mhm.
because he was so deep and talented as a performer, was able to elevate the show to another level that nobody anticipated,
Mhm.
and how then the show was able then to return to
Yeah.
Ross and Rachel
Yeah.
after that. From the wedding of Chandler and Monica, they were like, boom, we're back to
Right.
playing out of Ross and Rachel. That act two, as it
Mhm.
were, of the series, with Chandler and Monica, I think is what we collectively, whether it's conscious or not, is why everyone is still drawn to Friends.
Yeah, I saw some, 'cause obviously on all the feeds, there's plenty of Matthew Perry things happening right now, and I saw an interview with the writers, and I think it was probably from the reunion that they had put on, but they were saying how, the Chandler and Monica relationship, they were just gonna do this funny thing one
Mhm.
night, the night of Ross's wedding, and it was just gonna be this fun, and maybe they'd play it out a little bit and be funny with it, but because of how the audience reacted to it,
Mhm.
and how they all cheered, and they just let them go cheering in the audience for so long when they
Mhm.
reveal her in the bed, and they were like, "Oh, well, this is interesting. We need to explore this more, and we need to go down this path." And yeah, I mean, that that relationship, and I think you were rooting for it more than you were, let's say, Ross and Rachel. I
Yeah.
think Ross and Rachel you kinda rooted for in that first season, especially at
Yeah.
the end of the first season and all of that. But Chandler and Monica, you know, they had been friends for so long, and then they finally got
Mhm.
together and all those things that it worked really well. But, for Matthew Perry to be able to go into the relationship where he had been like the guy that's not in relationships and the funny
Yeah.
guy and the guy who can't commit and this and whatever it is, except to
Mm.
um uh why am I blanking on her name?
Janice.
Janice, thank you.
Mhm.
um but it again, it shows what he's able to do, and it brought out that rom-com guy again
Mhm.
and all of it, and you fell in love watching them together.
Mhm.
But yeah, throughout the show, you just hear his lines, and if you see any bloopers, it's always him,
Mhm.
jumping on something, a mistake
Yeah.
someone made, or one-upping something, or making everyone break, and it's him most of the time doing that.
Yeah. And I said it in my not a tweet last week
Mhm,
too, is that because he the character was allowed to show what were, I think, relatable insecurities of not just that time period, but
mhm,
still what you didn't see that played to us that kind of level and so effectively.
mhm,
And even just like the making jokes is my defense mechanism, that
yeah,
kind of stuff.
mhm,
Like just to be able to like identify,
yeah,
like self-identify as the character, what he was doing sometimes,
yes,
like what you didn't see that in
yeah,
TV show characters.
mhm,
And it made him very real and it made it very relatable again. And yeah, agreed that you fell in love with the two of them as you were discovering it along with them. As they were discovering it, you were discovering it. And
yes,
I think that was really a joint venture. I think a rare, where we talk about live theater, the theater audience relationship, a shared experience there, a rare, like, the TV viewers were
mhm,
actually sharing that along with you. It's appointment viewing, especially when they were hiding it. When they were
yeah,
hiding it, it was
oh my
so
god,
gold, so
so
gold.
good. Um, yeah, and I think Chandler as a character was probably the most relatable.
Mhm.
Just because he had so many variations to him. Everyone was kinda in Joey was funny, and I'm putting this in quotes, everybody, in case you're
Mhm.
listening to an audio later, of the dumb one and the one who
Mhm.
doesn't get it and whatever, and the actor and
Yeah.
all of that. And you have everyone's, like, in their box, but you had
Yeah.
Chandler who was constantly making jokes, but also pointing out his insecurity, but also had this big fancy corporate job, but also could be,
Right.
like the best husband ever to Monica and
Mhm.
whatever. It's all these factors, all while underneath it all, like having this awkward persona to him that so many people can relate to one part of him in some way as he's
Yeah.
playing the character.
The comments are going too fast for me to keep up. But yeah, and I think you know, for better for Ross, for better for Ross, for better for worse about Ross,
Uh-huh.
you know, he, I that's what I think it was important for them to pull back a little bit on Ross during that time period, but also I think unfortunately for the character where Joey and Phoebe were these exaggerated sitcom comedy
Yes.
characters,
Hmm.
commedia dell'arte, servant like characters
Hmm.
serving the lead players when and Monica wasn't like that at the beginning. It took a while for Monica to find that footing. Chandler
Hmm.
was that character to support Ross
Yeah.
and Rachel as the lovers,
Hmm.
but when the relationship broke up and they had to pull back a little bit, they kind of gave that exact and they kept going with the exaggerated stuff for Ross,
Hmm.
but it no longer was as it wasn't the endearing Ross of those early seasons.
Right.
And I don't know if, in audience eyes, if he ever recovered from that.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. And I think although they kind of did all play those parts
Mhm,
in your setup there of the
mhm,
lovers and the supporting and all that,
mhm,
I think hearing about them or seeing interviews throughout the years, and hearing their genuine friendships behind the screen and how they went into contract negotiations as a team and all
mhm,
these little things
mhm,
also made you, as you're watching the show, you feel like it's more genuine because there's so much happening behind the scenes in a real way. These are not just people showing up to work, acting together, and leaving. And like you kind of felt that too as the show was going on. And I think that does say a lot because you see plenty of shows where like these people might not be getting along behind the
mhm,
scenes, or
mhm. Right.
they're kinda, they're doing what they need to do, and that's it.
Mhm.
Where as this group seemed to have a true bond, a true connection, and it came out in the stories they were telling.
Yeah. So we don't spend the entire time talking about Chandler on Friends. Give me your top Chandler Bing moments.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, obviously, I love his when him Monica proposes to him, he proposes
Mhm,
to Monica, whatever.
mhm,
Obviously, I'm crying at that episode. Um, I oh man, now I gotta try to I one of my favorite episodes ever is the one where everybody's not ready. I don't know the name of that
uh-huh,
episode
mhm,
where Ross it's the "Could I be wearing any more clothes?"
right,
That
mhm,
episode is hilarious to me, and Chandler and Joey going back and forth with their one-upping and who's stealing the seat cushion and whose chair it is, and, "Oh, I'm so comfortable." That whole show first of all, I love that entire episode, I think because it just takes place in the apartment, everyone's doing their thing, and everyone has these specific stories, and it's
mhm,
all in one spot, and
yeah.
it's hilarious. But that's one of my favorite episodes for sure, especially with Chandler. I'm trying to think. Oh man, I don't know. What do you have? Because maybe then I'll
No,
think
well,
of
I was
others.
gonna mention in the proposal episode, that's like a whole Matthew Perry tour de force there. But, when he goes into Richard's apartment, "I'm not scared of
Mhm.
you. I'm not scared of
Uh-huh.
you." I like that. Like, I love that scene so much because that is anyone who is afraid of being direct and actually, gonna take that leap and
Mhm.
tackle the thing directly. Like, that's a relatable thing that a lot of
Yeah.
people run away from mostly. And just be like, no, I'm just gonna be focusing on her, and I'm actually not gonna face the thing that's
Yeah.
really could possibly get in the way.
Yeah.
Um, so I just love that episode. I also really love this any episodes leading up to London where Monica and Chandler are together, where you kind of start to
Mhm.
see like, oh, they have chemistry. Like Chandler was trying to lose weight or something, and Monica was unemployed, so she was trying to
Yes.
get him to work out. Like I'm like, you're testing the waters. You're
Yes. Oh,
testing
for
the
sure.
waters here.
Hmm.
And I actually love the stuff with Kathy. I mentioned Paget Brewster on Theme
Uh-huh.
Park Thursday Live, but
Oh, yes.
like I just love that arc.
Yes.
Um, because I hate how it ended,
Yeah.
but for an arc for Joey and Chandler, and for how he was connecting to her, uh, I just thought it was, and again in the sense of leading up to Monica, that it was the right story before
Hmm.
going into that. So as a storytelling device, I really love those episodes.
Yeah. Yeah, when he buys the Velveteen Rabbit.
Right. Val's
I
like, Kathy makes me mad. Hey,
yeah.
they had to really make that character awful in
Right.
order for us to move on.
Right.
Much like they had to really blow up Joey and Rachel. Like
Yes.
the same way where you watch like Joey and you're like, okay, what when she was pregnant, their chemistry was fire. So
Yeah.
then you watch those episodes after they got together, whatever. And
Ugh.
it's like, wow, they really intentionally sabotaged this.
Yeah. It's constantly like, why? Why was this going on? Why did they do this? Val's also mentioning the one where everyone finds out and Chandler and Phoebe were
Oh,
hilarious. That's
mhm.
right. When
Oh,
they go
mhm,
just back and
yeah,
forth
mhm.
and
Oh, that
are
is, I
on a
mean,
date.
yeah, that is, it could be. I would have to really think about it. One of the greatest 30 minutes of comedy,
Yes.
because it's the build is so good, and whenever Chandler was with Rachel and Chandler was with Phoebe, like it felt special.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And the fact they got that much time together in that episode, and it was just so outrageously funny
Yes.
and subtle in some ways, as much as it
Mhm.
was like crazy to go back and forth. The little things that they did, it was that, yeah, that's a great point, Dr. Val. I'm glad you brought that up
Yeah.
because I would have been mad if I forgot that one.
I know. It's so good. That's the thing. Like I know I'm
Mm.
gonna the one with Chandler in a box.
Oh, he
Can't
got put in a
remember.
box because is that
Oh, that's
was
right.
Kathy too? Is that a Kathy consequence, or
I
he
feel
was
like it was.
apologizing for something? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, when he touches her shoulder.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, it's
You know,
so good.
yeah, it's so good. Um, okay, I'm trying to think. I don't want to move away from Friends without
I
really
know.
thinking of, and on it, we don't talk a lot about post the wedding, but
Mhm.
you know, Chandler making it work for the adoption and the
Yeah.
surrogacy, basically, kind of going like, righting that wrong, even though Monica was a little outrageous in that episode. But, he was able to ground those moments. And I think of that where this episode's a little off. I'm like, why is she pretending to be a doctor the whole time?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
It can frustrate you, but he was able to ground those moments. The other one I want to think of is when Mr. Heckles dies,
Oh, yeah.
because it is so what's the word I'm looking for? It's a little it's a word that begins with the letter S that I cannot think of. But it's very, like with the music, piano music playing in the
Like
background at the end, and he
campy,
closes
like
the yeah,
just yeah.
like, oh, come on. You don't have to make
Mhm.
it this sappy sweet kind of,
Mhm.
thing. But Chandler's line delivery, I'm like, the line delivery is perfect.
Yeah.
It's ruined by this music.
Yeah.
uh,
But and to your point of, him with the adoption and all that, I feel like Chandler in any of those moments, like if you go back to, when he kind of gets back together with Janice, but then Joey catches Janice and her ex kissing
mhm,
and she shows up and she's like hyperventilating in
mhm.
the bag
Right.
and
Yeah, yeah,
he's
yeah.
like, "Do you love him? Do you love me? Do you, like
Mhm.
those moments or him talking to the surrogate for the adoption, not the surrogate,
Right. Yeah.
the babies they were gonna I
Yeah.
forgot what is her name? I am blanking on her name too.
Anna
Blanking on
Anna
everyone's
Faris.
name. Anna Faris, yeah.
Yeah.
When he's talking to her, or at the wedding when he like these moments where he had to kinda, like, go into the emotional side of him was always so good because
Mhm,
he's so funny all the time, and the fact that he could take it there and make you feel things and,
mhm.
those are always good. Yeah, that's right. Dr. Val earlier mentioned when, they took Marcel in, and they he said he was trying to spell monkey when he swallowed the piece yeah,
Yeah.
that's so funny. Um, yeah.
Um, and I see Lewis mentioning the adopt. For the final season of any great show is always somewhat weirder to watch. I'd say this about final episodes sometimes because they always film like the final episode outside the realm of when they
Mhm.
film all the other episodes, so you just feel like things are off.
Yeah.
Friends' final season is a little like that in general, but yeah, I mean, I think it's funny to listen to hear people to have conversations about Friends sometimes, whether this week or anytime, where the immediate reaction to Chandler is the funny guy,
Mhm.
and really there's so much nuance underneath that.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating.
Yeah.
Um,
Val's mentioning that she saw Matthew Perry ask for the final line. I saw that as well,
mm,
that he went into the writers and was like, "Can I close it
mm,
out?" And that's why when Rachel says, "Do you wanna get some coffee?" I think that's how it was supposed to end, but then he goes,
mm,
"Sure, where? Where are we going?" Or whatever he
yeah,
says.
yeah, yeah, right.
So and that was, like, the actual final line, but
He snuck it in.
yeah.
Well, and they said I read somewhere that, and I didn't know this, that not Chandler, Matthew Perry was the only one allowed in the writers' room,
Yeah, I saw that too. Mhm.
which I
But
think
he's
is
he's so quick, and that's the thing, you watch those bloopers and you see him just react or build
mhm,
on something or
yeah.
go bigger on whatever the little mistake someone made was or whatever it was. He was so quick.
Do you want to tackle as we move away from Friends? Well, and just kind of separate ourselves from Friends. You
Mhm.
want to talk about the rom com Matthew Perry?
Oh, the rom-com Matthew Perry. Yeah, so I mentioned Fools Rush In. I know he had done, where is I'm trying to think of the other, I have the IMDb up here of the other I don't know if we call, Serving Sarah a rom-com, but I guess maybe, right? Maybe, I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
enough about that movie. Um, but, again, I think him and Jennifer Aniston around in those mid-90s were both thrown into, "Here, go do some rom-com, see how that goes," because I do
Hmm.
feel like it was those same years and, similar types of movies that kinda had the same vibe to them, the same feel to them.
Hmm.
I love Fools Rush In, I really do, and I think I think those types of movies and those types of roles for him, like, show his charisma more and show like, the
Hmm.
facial expressions, his little, like, serious face to full-on smile and how, like, quick his whole face can light up and all those moments.
Right.
Um I love, but, and then I don't know if I mean, we can tackle other things of,
Hmm.
going to, Studio
Yeah.
60.
Yeah. No,
Um,
we can.
yeah,
I think I just want to ask about. Do you think, because you're such a rom com historian,
I
as
sure.
it were,
Mhm,
um, would you say because I mean, there's some good early 2000 rom-coms, but the Tom Hanks, Meg Ryan, that style of rom-com seemed to be on the way out and
mhm.
transitioning by 2000. Do you think if it had stayed a little longer, Matthew Perry would have made more of those movies?
I don't know.
I mean, he was still
Um,
doing Friends at the time, so it's hard to really say.
yeah. I don't know. I feel like because he was also being thrown into some other right, there was
Yeah.
what was that one movie I'm thinking of? Hold on, I can't think of it right now. Maybe if I see it somewhere The Whole 10 Yards?
Oh, yeah.
Um,
The whole 9 yards with, Bruce Willis, yeah.
right.
Mhm,
So, I feel like he was also being put into comedic roles and things like this. I don't know, if he would've stayed there, or did they feel he was even though he was not old, was he too old to
mhm,
play those parts and they were going younger? Because I do
yeah,
feel like, and this might be we could do a whole rom-communism episode of Dillos Pop at some point, but Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks movies. If you look at like You've Got Mail and you just look at them, they're in their 30s, probably
mhm,
heading towards their late 30s or whatever.
mhm,
And Meg Ryan's wearing khakis. I, this and I'm saying this as a you would never see that probably past 2000. Like you
mhm,
just don't see someone that looks relatable. Someone
yeah,
like two people that look very relatable falling in love in a rom-com.
Mm.
I feel like at some point it hit the over the brink of pretty people. You only had, and not that they weren't pretty people. Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, very pretty people, but like they dressed them as, average people, and they didn't do up the hair and the makeup, and they didn't make them fancy. And it was just this, but it was Nora Ephron. Okay, we just have to have a whole thing. But yeah, so I don't know if he would have kept going. Kind of like Jennifer Aniston, I feel like didn't
Right.
still go with it after a
Yeah.
certain point either, and then she kind of went the Adam Sandler path, and so yeah, it's kind of hard to say.
And I mean, obviously, the thing we're not discussing as much is the personal issues
Yeah.
that Matthew Perry was dealing with. So it's hard to really say what would have happened. But I think there was a shift in how, the romance movie was made,
Yeah.
whether rom-com or not, after 2000. So it's just always curious to me. And and it could be very well be because since at 97, 98 is when the Chandler and Monica stuff happened. Maybe he was like, I'm not doing rom-coms. I'm in a rom-com right now.
Right.
22
Yeah.
episodes a year.
Yes.
So that's interesting. Yeah. So we could briefly just like, there was Ally McBeal, there was The Good Wife, there was these other there was West Wing, there was like, again, natural kind of placement that had comedic lines to it, especially Ally McBeal, and West is any Sorkin writing obviously is going to have some comedy behind it. But Studio 60 is kind of this anomaly. It's like, people hold it in such high regard, and it was just the worst timing, I think.
Yeah.
I think it was just too soon. It was too soon for Sorkin. It was too soon for Bradley Whitford. It was too soon for Matthew Perry. And so it never kicked into that gear. I'm a big Sports Night fan. So that's my Aaron Sorkin. I love West Wing, so I'm not discounting West Wing at all. But Sports Night, which only lasted 2 seasons because West Wing was becoming a juggernaut on a different network, it was Sports Night was just similar to me. The Studio 60 was similar to Sports Night. So I just felt like maybe if it had been another year or two, it would have been more accepted than it was. It's hard to say.
Yeah, because I do think it was so good, and anyone who did watch it is like, "Oh god, why did that have to end?" And yeah, maybe it was timing, but it's so bad when the timing will ruin something like that, because it was just so good that, it didn't find its groove, I guess, and wasn't bringing in the numbers like it should have at that time, or they didn't Dillo their expectations and expected too much because of the writing and the cast and everything.
I
But
mean, and only because we mentioned, because she was in a whole 9 yards. But I'm not an Amanda Peet fan, and
I was gonna bring that up.
that was often the challenge for me.
Well, listen, I'm sure she's a very nice person. She has acted a ton. She's in that Jennifer Aniston movie I like, the not Picture Perfect, no, the one with the brothers McMullen guys.
Ed
Why
Burns
can't I
and
think of that? I'm blanking on the name, but anyway, but she plays her sister in that, all that. But there is a conspiracy theory out there.
Oh, is
And
it?
anything, yes, that anything she's in
Oh,
doesn't go well.
oh.
Like,
I mean,
you've never heard that conspiracy?
no, I thought that was just a
Interesting.
me thing.
No, that's like that's a thing out there that's like, oh, and I remember hearing that way back, and I remember seeing things like me and Mr. Snidell will be like, oh, who's that? Oh, Amanda Peet's in it. Oh, it's probably not gonna do well. Yeah.
And I don't know what it is, because there is. I'm not saying, it's just there's something. It doesn't click.
Yeah.
I'm not saying she's anything wrong necessarily. I just don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it. But I do know after Studio 60, and they announced like in a couple of years they're gonna bring back the X-Files for a movie, and I was like, yes. And they're like, Amanda Peet will be playing. I was like, no.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, now you can do a whole deep dive on that conspiracy.
Oh, Jeffers loves Amanda Peet.
Oh. Is that because what was she in? I'm gonna say Jeffers loves that. What is that? Is it Saving Silverman she's in? Is it It's one of those movies.
Do I not
Dang
mean
it.
Amanda Pete from what's Amanda Pete in Studio 60? Am I
Yeah, no,
correct?
she was. She was.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, I'm pinpointing why Jeffers. Maybe Jeffers loves her because of Studio 60. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. No, we do not mean. Are you saying Rena Sofer, Lewis? Because we love her
Yeah.
from General Hospital.
General
So
Hospital, of course.
we go way back with her. So she can do no wrong in our book. Because
Mhm.
who did she play on General Hospital?
She just went back to General Hospital. You know that?
Did you? Oh, I think I do remember seeing that.
As Lois, right? Is that her
That's right,
character name?
Lois. Yes.
Brooklyn's
Don't
mother.
don't
That's
say,
fine.
"Is that her character?" You know very well that's her character.
How dare
Another
you?
Dillos Pop episode will be all about soap operas. Um, Joyce Tang shows. Yeah, I kind of do. Yeah, that's probably true about her too. Except General Hospital. Outside of General Hospital, I do know that I've never seen her be on some sort of long running show.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to look up what else Amanda Pete stuff, but all right.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I have the DVDs of that as well, and I probably will go back and watch it at some point because it's been a while for me. I'm sure that's on Peacock too, isn't it?
On the
Probably
Peacock.
easier than try to put in a DVD these days.
Yeah,
What about
that's
Ted McGinley? He's always like he's got that curse too.
yeah. Mhm.
And
Mhm.
he's always pretty good and stuff.
Oh, the Jenkins episode of How I Met Your Mother. That's right. She is Jenkins on How I Met Your Mother. Remember when Marshall always talks about Jenkins at work to Lily, and then Lily finally figures out that Jenkins is Amanda Pete and not a guy? And so they go back through all the stories.
Oh,
It's
it's
like, oh,
becoming a Amanda Pete episode of Dillos Pop here.
boom, Jeffers nailed it. I knew
That's a
why
good
you
one.
loved Amanda Pete. Yeah, it's so funny.
That's funny. I don't think I'll have to go back and watch that. I feel like I have to go back and watch How I Met Your Mother again. And maybe
Oh
it's
man,
just because Jason Segel's been in my TikTok lately.
I feel like that show. Am I frozen right now? I feel like
No, no.
my
Are you
internet's
here?
going wonky. Oh no, I yeah, I think because I'm looking at IMDb, I gotta close that out. It's
No.
messing me up. I think I'm glitchy. I How I Met Your Mother. I feel like is my cleaning show. I'm like, I gotta clean. Let me put this on while I'm cleaning, and I do a bunch of other things. But yeah,
And then there was several sitcoms of Matthew Perry. Like I really wanted to Go On, where he was the talk show host, right? Sports talk show host. So yes, Lauren Benatti was in it as the group therapist. I was like,
hmm
yes, because I love her on Broadway, and so
yep,
I was like, yes, this is the combo.
yeah.
And unfortunately, it didn't go anywhere, and I probably didn't watch that many episodes, so I'm partly responsible.
Is
But
that the one like in the sports stadium? Like he's in?
no,
Or
that's a
am I thinking
different
of
one.
something
That
else?
that was that one was on ABC. Because Go On was on NBC. The one where he's in the sports stadium, which
What?
is, here, and we're gonna talk about Oscar Madison in a second, but it's funny, how much sports related stuff Matthew Perry. I mean, he
hmm
liked tennis, and I'm like, well, I didn't know he liked other sports. Um,
And wasn't he a tennis player on 90210? Wasn't that his
oh,
character? Is
maybe,
that why Brandon was writing a story about him?
oh, maybe. Mr. Sunshine
Mr. Sunshine. Yes.
is the ABC one.
Yes.
Uh, so yeah, Go On. But then he did The Odd Couple, and I was like,
Mm.
okay, I don't really see you as Oscar Madison, and I tried it a couple. It just, it
Yeah.
wasn't meant to be. I think it was on longer than I thought it would be too. But
Yeah.
as a testament to him, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, Dr. Val liked the
Yeah.
reboot of The Odd Couple.
Yeah. I don't think I watched much
Yeah,
of it.
I mean, and that's when the book came out last year, I'll probably read the memoir now. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't read it then, but
Mm-hmm.
it probably will be, in my reading list at some point. But it's it's crazy to think that this is where we are.
Mm-hmm.
They had the reunion, and you could tell he was struggling the most, I think, with the
Mm-hmm.
reunion. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's public knowledge. But you could see it on the reunion episode itself. And it's just it's hard. It's hard to fathom
Yeah.
in some ways that, this is someone who's for almost 30 years, right? It's gonna be 30 years in next fall that the
Mhm.
first season of Friends is gonna be 30 years old. And what? How old are we? Uh
30.
but how much the role resonates and how much his acting resonated and how much even you talk about the rom-coms. I was gonna say is like those don't I like Fools Rush In. I probably saw it once. I probably should watch it again. I don't think I've seen it more than
I've
one
seen
time.
it 1,000,000 times.
Yeah, 1
But I
million
think it was
times.
also one of those movies that was always on, like,
Yeah.
through the years when I was plugged in, and that movie was just always on somewhere, and I would always stop and watch it. Yeah, I mean, they on TikTok, there were a lot of videos where, psychologists were stitching them, and I didn't really watch them through because I was like, "I
Mhm.
don't wanna deep dive. I need to just feel my
Right.
feels, and that's it."
Mhm.
But that people were like, "Why am I so upset by this? I didn't know him. He's an
Mhm.
actor, but why am I sitting here crying about someone I never even met?" And, but it is that. It is Friends was one of those comfort it still is one of those
Mhm.
comfort shows. Anyone can put it on at any time and feel like, "Cool, I can just relax with this show. I'm just in it. I know what's coming, but it's also really funny,
Mhm.
and, it'll make me laugh, it'll make me feel good. These people are funny," all the things. And he had a way of bringing you into his characters, and I think also him being in the news so much over the years, and
Mhm.
we see it with season to season on Friends, and we know when he's doing well and maybe he was not doing as well. And
Right.
that engagement episode is a perfect example. The season
Yeah.
finale of the engagement and picking up the
Mhm.
next season, and he looks completely different.
Right.
And I think what's hard too is that, like, you hope that whatever happened was completely accidental, or a
Mhm.
bigger health issue and all of that, because but also it's like he struggled so much, and if he was just in a good place, it's like,
Mhm.
really,
Mhm.
like, and so far that's what we're seeing, is that he was just in a really good place. I think he had committed to a new project, and
Yeah.
all these things are coming out, whether they're true or not, who knows, but, like,
Right.
and I think that's hard too, when someone has struggled, and when he writes this book. And I know in the book he mentioned that, everyone's going to remember him for Friends, and he loves that, but also, like, he did do a lot of good. Hank
Mhm.
Azaria was talking
Oh, yeah.
about
Mhm.
how much he helped him get sober, and, like, he did so much good as he was working through his own stuff, that
Mhm.
it's just like, I mean, when you sent me that article, I was like, "Wait, what?" And
Mhm.
then I unfortunately told Val, knowing what
Oh.
a Friends connection we have, and I was like, "Have you heard the news?" And she said, "No," and I was like, "Oh, no, I don't wanna be the one to tell you." But it's I told her, it's one of those things that are like, you see it and you go, "No, maybe this isn't true.
Mhm.
Maybe
Mhm.
they
Yep.
got it wrong, and they have,
Mhm.
even though it's TMZ and they
Mhm.
rarely get it wrong, maybe they got this one wrong," and you don't really wanna believe it at first, and it's crazy and so sad.
Yeah. No, and I think that's what you see how everyone has spoken or
Mhm,
written or anything about him all week. It speaks to um, his genuine nature. We talk
mhm,
about being genuine a lot
mhm, mhm,
on all the things we do all the time. Characters that are genuine and authentic. And I think how everyone has responded. In the '90s, he dated Julia Roberts. You were like, wow, he's really. I mean,
yeah,
obviously, there was something about him that drew people to him,
mhm,
and the fact that he was able then to put it back out and help others,
mhm,
and hearing people speak up about that is really something I have not been able to put on. Like, I've obviously TikTok, I see
mhm,
some friend scenes. I have
mhm,
not been able to put on an episode yet.
mhm,
I have not turned on the channel.
mhm,
I will cable still plugged in.
mhm,
I flip over to the Seinfeld reruns all week,
yeah,
and Mr. Dillo is like, "You're watching Seinfeld?" I said, "I'm not watching
mhm,
Friends, not yet."
mhm, yeah.
So
Yeah, I know. I haven't wanted to. Like, you do and you don't, you're like, "Oh god." And they were like, "How am I ever gonna watch this again?" And before we went live here, I was like, "You know what? I'm just putting it on. I'm putting it
Mhm.
on right now and I'm just going in it." And then immediately, as soon as he's on screen, me and Mr. Schneider, oh man. No,
Mhm.
this is sad. I don't
Yeah.
wanna. Ugh, it's horrible.
Like, I'm afraid to put it on, and it's like the episode, like, that will make me react stronger
Yeah,
than, like, "Can we just have, like, a very Ross Rachel-centric episode the first
right,
time I
right.
watch, please?"
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
so, yeah, and it is, it's just one of those things. It's someone who, you were able to connect to, helps you to escape for a little while,
Mhm.
whatever it was, those things hit you harder when they
Yeah.
are able to take you out, and especially that, again, friends being such a comfort that it is for many people,
Mhm.
when it's able to provide that much space for you over decades,
Yeah.
you know, it's and combined with who he was as a performer and as a person, it's hard.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, yep, deep sigh at the end of this.
Mhm.
But we will wrap up here on the Dillo's Pop live stream here. What do you
Before we
think?
go,
What?
before
Yes,
we go,
yes. Mhm.
uh, how did
Mm,
we not?
yeah,
Him in the pink bunny costume. How do
mm,
we not mention that one?
so classic.
Yeah.
I mean, that whole holiday armadillo, the whole
Ugh,
thing is
the holiday armadillo. Yeah, we'll do a deeper dive on every single episode during our multi-part Dillo's Pop.
yeah. After the
Gonna keep
rom-communism episode,
Yes.
followed
Uh-huh.
by the How I Met Your Mother
Yeah.
rewatch.
Yes.
Uh, but thanks for hanging out with us here in the live stream chat
Mhm.
area the past hour or so as we conclude our three nights of live streaming all over the place. Of course, you can like and subscribe if you watch this whole thing. Do the thumbs up thing if you haven't done it already, and we'll be back before I will do something before I go to Iceland. I think
Oh, interesting. Stay tuned.
we'll see. I gotta look at my schedule.
Yeah.
Until that time, she's Jen. Nope, that way.
Mhm.
She's
There
Jen.
you go.
I'm Frank. Bye bye.
Deuces.